Hey guys, long time no talk. I haven't filmed a video in, I feel like over a month. I think the last one I put up was the motivational slash career coaching video that I did at the University of Miami. So that was awesome, but it's definitely been a while and I wanted to come on and talk to you guys because I've been getting a lot of questions recently from friends, family, some of you guys that follow me on Instagram about how to really apply for colleges, whether it's a graduate program or an undergraduate program. And overall, I mean, there are different things that you'll need to take into account depending on the program that you're applying to, and depending on, the level of education. So if it's a master's, you obviously have things like GMATs, GREs, different entrance exams versus undergrad where it's SAT scores and ACT scores, or depending on the country, you might not even have either of those. But overall, I think there are a couple things that you can do to really set yourself up for success when it comes to the college application process. So I wanted to go over those. I have 6 tips written down. I'm just gonna fire through them. And of course, if you have any questions on these, feel free to either leave a comment or reach me on Instagram, send me a direct message at Miss Motivate. I'll have all that stuff linked down below. But overall, again, these are, I think, pretty consistent no matter what level of education you're applying to. And I've quite a bit of experience in the college application process. When I was an undergrad, when I was in high school, I actually applied to over 30 universities in 3 different countries. And I've been to 2 different universities. I'm currently applying for grad school. So there is a lot of different tips that I picked up over the years. So the first, and I would say probably most important thing, is to really understand what the deadlines are. So every school and program will have different application deadlines, and it is so critical to keep track of all of those, obviously, because if you don't, then naturally you're gonna miss your opening. Some schools have rolling admissions, which means that you can apply until they close admissions. So it's not necessarily a set end date. They might have rolling admissions until the program starts. So let's say the program starts in July. They might be able to continue to accept you until June. So rolling admissions, are a little bit different, but for the most part, a lot of schools have pretty firm deadlines, and it is important to really know what those are. My biggest tip here is to actually just have an Excel spreadsheet or a calendar where you can see what each deadline is. Okay, I need to get my SAT scores in by this day. I need to get my essays in by this day. I need to have my transcript sent by this day. Here is when the first round of acceptance letters come out. Here is when I'll know for sure. And being able to stay on top of that, especially if you're applying to more than a couple schools, is gonna really serve you in the long run, because what you want to avoid is missing a deadline because you assumed that all schools maybe have the same, and then before you know it, you missed your mark. So no deadlines. It seems like an obvious one, but believe me, if you're applying to a lot of different programs and schools, you wanna make sure you're on top of that. So number 1, know your deadlines. Number 2, provide all the information to the schools that you're applying to, and make sure that, if they are requiring essays and transcripts, you don't miss any of those things. So again, having a spreadsheet that really says, okay, well, I need to get SAT scores in by this day, or GRE scores in by this day. I need to have a transcript in by this day, are critical. And making sure that the things that you don't even necessarily always send in are still being sent in. So if you tell your school that you need a transcript sent to a university, you want to make sure that you're calling that school and you're following up and speaking to whoever is in charge of transcripts and making sure that you have confirmation that those things have been sent in. So it's, again, an obvious one, but these are the things that get overlooked. And once you miss that boat, you got to wait another year to apply, or another 6 months. So be careful with that. So kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of things, this is my 3rd tip. Essays. Almost every program, a couple schools don't require it. Actually, the school, it was so funny. When I applied for college, I applied to, again, over 30 schools. And of course, the school that I got into is the one that I didn't need the essay for. So I spent so much time writing all these essays, and in the end, did it really matter? But most schools, one way or another are going to require some type of essay. So even if it's an essay for the, standard college submission site, or if it's a specific essay for that school, make sure that you really are being true to yourself in those essays. A lot of them ask you to kind of dive a little deeper and understand, and they want to understand who you are. They want to understand what your passions are, and get a feel for you, because ultimately they're going to use that information and, decide whether or not you'd be a good addition to their, student body from a holistic standpoint. So be true to yourself, and also consult someone, have someone close to you, and also someone who maybe isn't close to you, doesn't know you that well. Read the essays and, determine, okay, this, from a grammatical standpoint reads well, but from a personal standpoint, I would change this and this because you have so much more to offer in this arena, and I think you're selling yourself short, or, you're doing a really great job of showcasing yourself, but grammatically it's not flowing. So have a couple of pairs of eyes, really read over your essays, and make sure you're selective of who reads over your essays, but having that third-party opinion can go a long way as well. Again, it really boils down with the essays to showing that you're passionate. Schools want to see that you'd be a good addition to their student body and that particular program, and also sounding educated and sounding assertive, and like someone who knows a little bit about what they're doing. Especially if you're going to a graduate program, if you're going to spend 3 years in law school, or if you're going to be spending a year overseas to study a specific program, schools, especially when they have small student bodies, so if it's like a program where they only accept 200 people, they really want to know that you are a candidate who takes this seriously. And that also kind of goes into my next tip, which is researching. When you're applying to schools, research the schools, because you're going to want to tailor each asset that you submit to that school. So if, for example, you're applying to a school in Iowa, you're not going to talk about how you have big city dreams and you're going to, make all these connections because of the school. You want to maybe talk a little bit about the fact that they have a strong football program, or, that you are really looking for an all-American, college experience, and maybe not, as much of an urban one. So tailoring your assets around the school, your essays, and really showing that you are a strong fit for that school, I think can go a long way. And again, it's important to do your research when you're doing that. Know how many students go to that school, know what that school is about. Are they a very big science school? Are they a liberal arts college? Those things do come into play. So fourth tip is recommendations. This is a big part of the college application process, no matter what school you're going to. They want, kind of sign off, or to say, okay, Nellie is a hardworking student, and she, is dedicated, and she's really into politics, or whatever it might be. So you need to, really be selective with who you choose to be your recommendation, because this person, isn't necessarily going to show. You don't see what your recommendation letters look like. So you kind of have to put a lot of trust into the individual who's going to be writing your recommendation letter. You want to make sure they're able to speak to the skills that you truly embody, and also position you as a strong candidate for the program. And again, it kind of makes me think about the specific program that you're applying to, because if you're applying to a science program and you're having your art teacher craft a recommendation letter, you want to make sure they're speaking to the skills that, again, are going to lend themselves to that program. So be very selective of who your recommendations are. Make sure going into it that they're going to have something positive to say. Don't ask, the teacher, I hope you didn't fail a class, but if you did fail a class, don't ask the teacher of that class to write your recommendation letter. Choose people who you trust and are going to really represent you well in that letter, and also who are actually going to come through and write you a strong letter. If someone, is going to write a paragraph and not really care, it doesn't matter how much you like them or how much they like you, that's not a strong recommendation letter. So choose people, faculty of schools, former managers, people who are again able to kind of follow through, you would hope, at least with those. Okay, so 5th tip that I have is to actually contact the schools that you're applying to. It is underestimated, but those schools keep track of who's calling them up and asking them questions. They want to show they want to see that you're interested. So call up if you're applying to, the School of Communications. Call them up and, really take the time to speak with the counselors and ask them, real questions of how you can best get into the program. That type of interest goes a long way because a lot of people actually don't think to do that. So call up the schools, really get the information. If you can go for a tour and introduce yourself to the, head of the program or one of the counselors, putting a face to a name goes a long way as well. It's not necessary, but it helps. And they do keep track. They'll have books and they'll ask you on your transfer or on your application, have you visited the school, or, do you know anyone who works here? So things like that can go a long way as well. And then, 6th, make sure that everything has arrived on time. It goes back to the first point of deadlines, but follow up with the school once you've submitted everything. Hey, by the way, have you gotten this? I just want to make sure you've received my application. This actually happened to me when I was in high school. I had thought that everything got sent through to one of the universities that I'd applied to. And lo and behold, I remember 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail and it said, we only received half your application. And I thought, what happened? And it turned out my transcript never sent through to them. So keep track of everything, especially those things like transcripts. So those are my tips for applying to college. I have lots of other, tips on what to do when you're deciding on colleges, if that's something you guys would want to hear. But it is really important to stay on top of everything. And I always say this is actually a bonus tip, but it's better to cast a wide net sometimes than to, only do a couple schools and really cross your fingers and hope one works out. And then, maybe, leave heartbroken if it doesn't work. So I always say to cast a wide net. It's better to be safe than sorry. And that's my kind of bonus tip there is, if you can apply to a few more colleges, do it, but obviously go for the gold and have a college that is, a stretch. So maybe one that's a little less attainable, and then a safe bet, and then one that you, feel really confident is just a slam dunk. So that's kind of my bonus tip on applying to colleges is have, different types of schools that you're applying to, ones that you're for sure a definite get in, and then some that maybe are a little bit more of a stretch. So yeah, like I said, feel free to comment, send me a direct message on Instagram or an email. Let me know what kind of content you'd like to see, and I will see you in my next video.